All right, we're back. So we made it to episode 2.
So
Hi guys.
I'm new here, so hello.
Hey, Bernard, did you do any tutorials today? You couldn't, right? Because you had to go.
No. My interviews, yeah.
I had to take over.
Thanks, Jereld. You're the man. I owe you one.
So that means that your students will see you from next week onwards. Anyway, it's not an issue.
Yes.
Yeah. How has the first day been?
It's been fun. So finally getting to see and hear my students, and then hearing their concerns. Some of them, they are feeling lost lah. So I'm very glad that they have someone to tell this to.
Did you just say losted?
Yeah, that's their lingo lah.
So what's our agenda today for our podcast?
Right, Prof. So we look through Pollev questions, and the questions can be summarized into 3 categories. So first of all, course matter, right? So what are the quizzes like this, and how should we study or study for this module? So one thing to note about this question would be, seems like this module is kind of open-ended, right? We are not trying to find out which theory is true. Yeah, which theory of well-being is true, for example, right? So what's the point of this module, right? So one question like this, and then this type of question actually is recurring. So I heard some students ask me this question during tutorial today as well. So I asked for show of hands. So guys, who feel that you wasted your time reading Daniel Horstman? At the end of the day, say no, folk theory. And who feel frustrated? Quite a handful raise up their hands. Right. And then we have theory choice questions. So why should we choose one theory over another? And the third one is the more meta one, like the nuclear option kind of question. Why do we even need a theory at all?
These are the ones that, in a sense, are worth talking about, partly because they are not so straightforwardly connected with the course material when you think about it. Because the more course material connected ones, like, what's the difference between PST and DST and PPT? All those things are on the blog already, so please go and read them yourself, okay? I took a weekend to type all this out for you guys, so please go and read them yourself. I'm talking to the students, okay? So those are all the nitty-gritties, like Bob and Todd and Rob and Sob, all those scenarios, experience machine, and how are desires connected to, as it were, the real world, all those things. Hey, did any of these things come up in today's tutorial?
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think a few of those questions come out. I think there was one quite big important question also, which is related to the last podcast about objectivity, right? And then I pointed out to them the part about universality also, right? So it's a distinction that needs to be made.
Yeah. Anyway, to repeat myself, the course material related stuff, I spent a lot of time typing all those blog posts. Please go and read them.
Yeah, it's actually a very valuable resource. I spent more time reading the blog last time compared to the readings.
Wait, which cohort were you? 16?
Yeah, the first iteration when you took over.
That was when I first started blogging for this class. It's not that I did not use blogs for modules I taught in the past, but it was never this intensive because there are a lot more students. I think that's that's really the break point, and these are more junior students. Yeah. So let's go back to the first question. I think it's a very good question. I think that I just did a quick glance at the proportion of the students who are in our class. About 2/3 are from FASS, and the remaining 1/3 are not from FASS. And the remaining 1/3, a big chunk of them are what we might call students from the STEM disciplines, from engineering, from science, right, computing and all that, right. And there are some law students and business students as well. I was never unused to it. I think maybe I was just weird. But I don't know about you guys. Were you guys taken aback when you first started doing FASS types of humanity and social science subject? Or were you all art students back in JC, so this is no issue for you?
Yeah, I was an art student, so it was just a little more intense, but still manageable, yeah.
Yeah, I was a hybrid. My main art subject was actually history. So, but it was quite different because in JC, history is mostly just memorizing dates and stuff, or remembering stuff that happened. Then just a bit of arguing.
So supposedly it's better today, so.
Supposedly, yeah.
It better be better today, Yeah.
Yeah, so when I came to FSS, maybe a bit of a shock, but I kind of got used to it after a while.
Yeah, Prof. So for me, right, like I see there's a difference between philosophy modules and other types of modules, but that could be because I spend a lot of time like reading text on informal reasoning and formal logic myself during NS. So yeah, so okay, one reason why I like philosophy modules, right, is you actually don't have to memorize a lot of things. So right, when I take an econs module, or when I take maybe a history module or other GE modules, right, there are certain stuff that I have to memorize. But when it comes to a philosophy module, right, I find that the memory work is not as important compared to whether you actually understand something. Yeah, and maybe because I don't like to memorize stuff, so I always have a preference for philosophy.
In one manner of speaking, I disagree with that. It's not true that we are not forcing you guys to memorize. You just don't realize that that's what you're doing. If we do our jobs correctly, we are essentially helping you build neural nets, sensibilities to arguments, sensibilities to nuances in thinking that will just go like this, right? It is a kind of memory, You cannot escape from that. It has to be that the next time you encounter one of these, it just goes. You're not going to be checking out the blog or checking out resources anymore. Like you're talking about informal logic. I'm very sure that by this point you aren't going back to those textbooks to look stuff up, for the most part, right? Unless you're looking at something more, more specific, more targeted, because those wires have been building. That kind of mental muscle memory has been building for a while. I'm very interested in making sure that you guys have this kind of memory actually. And the students too, especially the students. I'm very interested in it. But the way to achieve it, as far as I'm concerned, is not to make you do the kind of factual memory, because that's hopeless. That doesn't help me at all, right? I don't need people to know how to rattle off the definition of a necessary or sufficient condition. That's useless to me. I need them to be able to see those things. And that takes practice and exercise, building up that kind of memory. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a way, applying those. Yeah, go ahead, Gerald. In a way, applying those.
You guys can talk at the same
skills,
time, so yeah.
Sure, yeah, we can have a party. So in a way, applying those skills is like a higher order skill than just memorizing. So you're actually demonstrating that you understood it, so that you can apply it. So
correct. Yeah, but I think that we are not. I'll be one of those. I'm old-fashioned in this sense. I talk about it in terms of memory because let's face it, it is a kind of memory. It's not that. Very piecemeal kind of, there's this fact I need to know, there's that fact I need to memorize. It's not that kind of memory. It's rather the kind of a disposition that's settled in your mind that makes it possible for you to do things. It's a kind of skill actually, right? But to call it not memories, to me sounds a bit weird. Like it is totally, wiring your heads. Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, bro, it's like the kung fu the muscle memory, right?
Yeah, it's like a kung fu right? I love that analogy. There is a genuine question here. If that's what we're targeting, then how do we design the class? How do we design the module as a whole to make this happen? I hope people realize that this is why the quizzes exist the way they do.
Yeah, probably on the quizzes part, like the very first class today, which is an 8 a.m. class, right? It ended at 9. And like at the end, like I sort of split them up and like let them like chat in their own small groups, like even after the class ended for a while. And like they stayed there for like 30 minutes, and like when I went in to check on them, it's like, oh, we're discussing the quiz. I was like, what? It just came out like after the tutorial. Like, oh, okay.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you guys. My class.
Yes, your class.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's your class. You can't even take credit. You can't take credit for it yet. Okay, I tell you.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. No, but this is pretty serious stuff, right? To the extent that you appreciate being a human being, that you care about the human condition, these are the kinds of questions that should bug us at least at some point in our lives, right? We don't all have to be professionals worrying about theory well-being all the time. But if, you'll be very strange, you never thought about, so what makes it that, this thing is better than that, or this is good, or, the general question, right? So, but in order for you to be able to tackle those kinds of questions in a philosophical way, and we mean the disciplinary philosophical way, we don't just mean like sort of like I'm a consumer of interesting ideas on TED Talks or something like that, then you gotta have that kind of kung fu. Because otherwise you're just sort of repeating interesting ideas, that's about it, But if you want to spar with the people who are debating those questions, then you gotta have you gotta go in with the kung fu. You cannot just go in with those opinions. What's the use of going there with So dragging along Kant's whole textbook, with you. One side there's Immanuel Kant, on the other side there's Zhuangzi or whatever, So you're going to let them debate for you? No, that's not what it means to have learned a bit of philosophy. What it means to have learned philosophy is that you are now in a position where you may not know everything yet, but now you are in a position to critically think through these issues for yourselves and to, ask yourself, do I have an opinion about this? What will be an informed opinion? What will be a critically informed opinion, right? Why do I agree with this? Why do I not agree with that, right? So that is what we are hoping that you will walk away from this class with. I just end the sentence with a preposition. Okay, yeah. So the theories are important because they are the starting points of the discussion, right? So if we are interested in figuring out, getting to know a little bit more about how we can think harder and more carefully and more rigorously about well-being, of course, starting from what some of the big theories are out there is a very logical thing to do, right? But there's a reason why these are the big theories with the S at the back, right? Because it's still a matter of debate. It's still a subject of interesting disagreement, right? There are powerful minds on each side of the line here, right? We didn't even go into the kind of technical detail for each of the theories, but let's say preference satisfaction, of course, there's a whole body of literature out there, right? There are a lot of philosophy and economist types who are working very hard on that kind of stuff, right? There are also interdisciplinary connections, right? I'll talk a bit more about that. Imagine that a science student who took our class eventually went on to invent a pleasure detector. That would be really cool.
Someone in the Pollev requested for a hedonism bot.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hope that students sort of understand this a little bit better. The point of the readings is usually to start off the thinking, right? Now, it's not the case that every reading is like Houseman. Many of the readings, in fact, are going to argue for a very specific point of view. But if you walk away from the class with a certain opinion, just because we assigned the reading, we haven't done our job correctly. Yeah, if you walk away from the class with that particular opinion, it better be because you were personally convinced of the argument, having thought through the matter, using the skills that we have been we're going to try to reinforce throughout the semester, right? You may end up agreeing, disagreeing with many of these. Yeah. And I think that is correct. That is exactly what we want you to do. We want you to have your own carefully considered opinions, and we want to equip you with some of the tools for you to be able to have those, that level of engagement, right?
Prof, I think like a question that might be on the students' minds, right, is that okay, when we are tested, we are given MCQs, right, which do have definite answers, right? So how does that relate back to, getting them to think critically and about their opinions?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and it's a very tough nut to crack. So in a traditional philosophy class, we will usually ask students to write a paper, right, to argue for your own opinions, right, your own stance on the matter, right, your own criticisms of Houseman or whoever it is, and in a sense, that is still the preferred way. But in a very large class, it's not clear that is the best way. And secondly, it's not clear that junior students are already equipped with their sensibility, with that kind of close-in fighting skill, to do that kind of stuff. So the class is more modest in our aims in terms of what we're trying to deliver. We're trying to build those memories for you, those muscle memories in the mind for you. So the quizzes are maximally meant for that purpose. Right? We're going to give you the occasion and the chance to be able to debate with each other. Right? What the quizzes do is to help you be a careful and critical thinker and reader. That's what it is, right? You read the reading, you thought that you understood what it meant, or maybe you thought you understood at least that paragraph. You go for the lecture, I hope that I clear up some things, and you take the quiz and realize that, okay, the nuance here is even sharper than I expected, right? So that's why the whole learning cycle matters. It's about helping you gain that kind of precision, gain that kind of sharp thinking. That's what the quiz is all about, actually, right? The other target is not something that we can directly target. We're trying to give you the equipment to be able to do that. But to test you for that, I would much rather that you take a year 2 class. Then you are in a much better position to write your own paper and, make your own presentations and those kinds of things, right? But don't forget that that's why the tutorial exists, right? And that's why we want the group discussion summaries to exist. We want to start the process. It's not the end of the process.
Right. So, Prof, to circle this back to one concern about how should students study for this open-ended course, right? So, can we agree that actually there is a portion of this course that can be studied for? So, if students it's not really that open-ended, right? As long as students they are conscientious enough to understand what the readings are about, or what Prof Loy mentions in lecture, the distinctions that he wants them to be able to make between what is objective, what is universal, what is subjective, and there is still the skills to to like maybe what Zhuangzi say, like carve reality at its joints, or yeah, that kind of skills.
Technically, that's Plato, but
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
That's from the Phaedrus. Yeah, correct, absolutely correct. The ultimate point of the class is open-ended, but it doesn't mean that the actual workouts are open-ended, right? So, which exactly as Yong Teck is saying, there's a big chunk of the class material that is not open-ended at all. There is a right and wrong answer to all the questions we're asking for the quizzes. There's nothing kind of arguable about them. So this is the ironic thing about our discipline, isn't it? In order for you to be in a position to really go out there and freestyle with the masters, you can't be starting with a freestyle, man. You just get trashed by them and by yourself, actually. So yeah, I think it's like we are what we want to do is that we want to help you to be able to do the freestyle later on. But in order for you to reach that point, at this point it's not freestyle at all. At this point it's just hard cracks through the quizzes. Yeah. And there is a material that you have to master. Look, if this is what Norcross says, and if that's what Hausman say, does this apply? Did we really understand that premise correctly? Do you understand the premise correctly? Do you understand how these two principles that were introduced to you in the lecture, do you understand how they relate to each other? That distinction that we introduced? If you understood it, then here is a new context where we tell you some other story. Show me that you understand it. Apply it here. Right? And in all these cases, if we have done our job correctly, there's nothing open-ended about them. If we have done our job correctly. And if we set the questions correctly. Because they are very constrained questions. So yeah.
I guess we can say, like, before they even get started on any like open-ended stuff, like, or even forming their opinion, they need to like understand everything first, like, and all its sharp distinctions. And that's why we want to test like whether they can get it right or wrong, right? To test their understanding.
We don't have to make it such a straightforward before-after thing. It's not like a necessary condition in a straightforward way. It's not a temporal. It's rather, we're always interested in these things. We are hoping that you are encouraged to think about these issues yourself. And at the beginning, before all your muscle memories are built, you will be less precise. You will be noticing. You'll be failing to notice certain distinctions that philosophers will roll their eyes at you and right. But you keep doing it because we're going to help you do this over time through the quizzes, through the tutorials and all that, right? So throughout the semester, we hope that as you progress, you're going to realize that you're catching yourself. Oh wait, I wasn't being careful enough. Oh wait, hold on a second. Nah, that was way too easy. That was, I think that I'm missing something important there, right? So then that's a great discovery. Then you know that you're progressing. I don't know, is this enough? Do you think that this will help the students?
Yeah, I mean, Prof, I told my students who told me that the readings are difficult and they don't get some distinctions, then I tell them all this can be learned and they can be cultivated, but the process it will involve some pain. Yeah, so I told them that yes, it will be painful.
I wonder if there's an argument against hedonism.
I was going to say.
No, you know that's not a straightforward argument against hedonism. I'm not even a hedonist myself. I want to remind people, one of the important things about being able to do philosophy correctly is that you sort of respect your enemies, you respect your opponents. Yeah. And that's part of the skill we're trying to train, right? That's the reason why it's so important for people not to be, taught correct doctrine from day one. They have to learn to navigate the ambiguities, right? They need to understand that even if they really, really think that hedonism is false, the way to go about this is to learn the best version of hedonism and try to understand why, where they come from and all that. Yeah, then you are free to have your contrary opinion.
Yeah, Prof. So we are already moving towards this question about theory choice already. So when we have one theory and another theory, suppose I'm a very conscientious student of not just GET1029 but philosophy, right? And I really want to figure out which theory is the most plausible theory, the most viable theory. So how do I decide which theory is better? Let's say I don't just want to spend 1 week thinking about this. I want to spend my whole life thinking about this. So what should I yeah, so what should I do?
You're imagining this student, man. You're talking about yourself, right? What do you all do? You guys have all written honest thesis before.
The more I study philosophy, the more I see sometimes in different subfields of philosophy, there's different sort of criteria for what makes a theory good. But I've seen some sort of different common criteria. Let's say how it explains the data, right? So the data in our case, at least for well-being, is mostly the folk theory, right? Which is our intuitions, right? So one thing that is important for a theory to have is to explain our intuitions, and we choose based on which theory explains our intuitions better. At least there's one criteria.
Yeah, but like all things in philosophy, some people disagree with that. I would say that is a good first answer, because most of the time we started on thinking about the issue because we had intuitions in the first place, and we noticed puzzles arising from our intuitions. So the theory can't even sort of scratch our itch there. Why are we doing this, right? But the more you do, of course, you may also come to the conclusion that a big chunk of our intuitions are maybe worth jettisoning for all we know. Hey, I'm trying to remember. Bernard, what was your thesis about?
Well, my thesis was about the semantics of natural kind terms.
Yeah, yours is very data-driven. Yeah.
Yeah, very different. So I was actually wondering, so when we decide the merits of different theories, right, we sometimes think about, okay, a theory has to have good predictive accuracy or be parsimonious and not have too many ontological commitments. So I was wondering, there are so many differing norms and meta-norms that helps us to decide which theory is better in whatever context. So how do we decide which, is there a list? Is it how do we rank all these different,
Yeah, but you might want to explain it more simply first.
Oh,
So
yes.
what do you mean by parsimonious?
So, so basically, yeah. So I guess to simplify it, the easiest way to say it would be that there are different theories and there are different kinds of things that you can use as a standard to evaluate them. Let's just take predictive accuracy as an easy example. So let's say you have two different theories and you want to decide which one is better. You maybe you do thought experiments or you conduct real experiments and see which one gives you a higher proportion of accurate predictions. So the theory that gives you more accurate predictions will be the one you should prefer. So that's a usual argument that people make for preferring one theory over another.
But in a sense, maybe we're speaking at too abstract a level, right? I am thinking back to what Jereld was saying just now about intuitions. If you think about the first few topics, there's a reason why the intuition business is so big there. It's because we are dealing with things that we actually have a little bit of personal experience, right? It's about how to live life. It's about interacting with people. It's about noticing that we are being wronged, or noticing that we have wronged someone, or regretting, or all those normal things that we encounter in our lives as human beings. It will be very strange if people don't have opinions about those things. It will be very strange if you don't literally have reactions. It's just that whether you think about it, that's the only question, right? Whether you bother to sit down and think about it, right? No, let's think of this from the point of view of the year one students, right? To the extent that they might worry about theory choice, I think that a lot of it is quite contingent on the way we have introduced those theories in our class, right? So Houseman has done. I mean, this is meant to be a popular introduction. He just want to let people understand that, look, in the marketplace of ideas, these are the big ones. These are the big people who corner big chunks of the market. Desire and preference group, the pleasure people, and then the people who refuse to join these two groups, we call them the objective list people, right? Poor thing, actually. It feels a little bit like and the ones who are left, right? Which is not correct, actually, but that's not the point, right? Or for that matter, in the coming lecture, we're going to be talking about, consequentialism on one side and deontology on the other side, right? I think the students ask this question because they wish that they have a better way to sort of handle this. They want to have a better inkling of which is the one they should lean towards, right? But I think that the harsh truth is that we're not at a stage where we can really, really talk about that. What we can do is we can provide you considerations for and against each of them. You need to understand that each of these major theories have pros and cons about them, right? That's the reason why people still debate this. Otherwise, there wouldn't be, a debate at all. And if there's no debate, the philosophers would have decamped long ago and gone to talk about other things, really, right? But that means that it's not just about theory choice. It's also partly about the fact that each of these theories have important adherents behind them, because when you think about them, accepting one of them is not an irrational thing. It's believable, it's understandable, right? But it doesn't mean that there are no gaps. It doesn't mean that there are no objections. It just means that if you're one of those people who is more inclined towards preference satisfaction, you know exactly where the hurdles are. You know exactly who are you supposed to answer. You know exactly where you need to deploy your postdocs and research students to write their next thesis, to plug those gaps, to answer those objections. And then the people from the other side are doing exactly the same job, just mirrored around, that's all. Yeah, and time will tell who are the ones who are going to win out. Yeah.
A worry, again, that someone might have is that, okay, even before we look at the objections to each theory, we already kind of have like an opinion about which theory is true, right? Or at least which one we should adopt. And then when we adopt that theory, what we're actually doing is kind of like cementing our opinion rather than actually engaging in the arguments, right? And like actually, deciding which one to adopt. We are just like cementing our opinions.
I'm actually someone who is a bit more ironic about your starting points. If you come to the game already having some beliefs that you are convinced of, I don't necessarily see that as a problem, right? But I hope that the process has invited you, encouraged you to not necessarily be critical in a harsh way, but rather, okay, now I still believe in this, but I've been equipped thanks to Yong Teck and Jereld and Bernard and everybody else and Prof Loy to sort of hold it a little bit more likely, to ask myself what are the things below it, like why do I believe in them, and so on and so forth. And this process may take a long time. So I'm more ironic and more I'm less insistent that you must immediately jot the belief and find the foundation. I'm not Descartes, let me put it that way. Right? I'm not a foundationalist in that way. I don't think that's realistic. Right? I think that you cannot live life without already having lots of convictions. There's nothing wrong with that. But learn to hold them a little bit more gingerly, right? A little bit less, dogmatically, right? You should continue holding them if you really believe in them. Please don't need to go and be so, anxious about it. But spend time thinking about them, right? And respecting the people who disagree. That doesn't mean joining their camps. Respecting them just means that, okay, you guys are also very smart people. Don't worry, I will get back to you guys. Okay? That's respect. Thanks for all the objections you guys have shown me. Great, thanks. I know exactly what I need to work on.
Yeah, so it seems like you have described this ideal role model student, right? Which makes me think that Zhuangzi will be a bad role model. Because he will just go around laughing at Confucius and Mozi and just
But there is a backstory, right? I think that
Right.
yeah, I think that if we think of Zhuangzi merely as that jokester who walks around to laugh at people doing this, then you're right, he'll be a really bad role model. But always remember that he's a sparring partner of Hui-chieh, his logician friend. Always remember that he seems to take Hui-chieh seriously, and they do debate with each other. It means that thing is never simply over for him. In other words, he's not just there to poke at you. First and foremost, He's there to poke at you because he's in the game of very carefully examining his own beliefs and other people's beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Prof. So I was thinking about the question of not just even why should we favor one theory over another theory, but why should we care about all these theories at all? So during my tutorial, I actually told this analogy, but I don't know how far it can actually go. So I think about what a theory is supposed to do. Right? It's supposed to explain phenomena, right? It's supposed to explain. So let's say we have someone, we have all these facts about his life. We want to know, hey, this guy, do we have this theory? Do we have this formula to decide whether this fella he live a good life? So so we think about it as driving a car, right? So the car is actually the life. So you might not be the engineer or the mechanic, and you might not know how the gears work, or how the pedals and all the stuff work. But that doesn't stop you from already accepting that the car works and you can drive the car, right? So, but if you are more, if you care about theory, you care about how the car works, then in some sense it can benefit you when the car breaks down. Maybe you know how to fix it. But I'm not quite sure how far this analogy can go. Right? How can we map this over and explain philosophically how can theory benefit us in the sense of us fixing the car?
But of course, the difficulty is this. I raise this as the Aristotle versus Zhuangzi thing. Is it really true that practical theories or ethical theories help us? Is it possible to live well without there being a theory of well-being in your head? My sense of it is the answer is yes, well, actually.
Prof, like what I thought, right? Like if I need a theory of well-being to tell me how to live well, right? Then maybe I'm really missing something in life.
Yeah, that's right. But then, Jereld, are you more on the side of the intellectualists here, or the side of the anti-intellectualists on this? Do any of you really believe that in order to live well, you need some kind of account, some kind of knowledge, theory, whatever you want to call it, about what's the...
Well, I wouldn't call it theory, but I feel like you should at least have given it some thought. So it's not just, oh, I'm living well just because it happened that I'm living well. That you actually thought about, okay, in this circumstance, what action should I take? And that kind of thinking is not theory. It's nowhere near like the level of theory, but I feel like maybe that reflexivity is what I'm after.
Yeah, that reflexivity and that precision and that sharpness, right? So ironically, we are back to that whole, why are we making you practice Kung Fu? Okay, the important thing to mention is that this is not actually literally in your course material. Okay, but I hope that it has begun. What we have done is we have actually begun to invite you to be a bit more self-reflective and stepping apart from yourself and applying your critical faculties to yourself in that way, right? I hope that this will be useful to the students. Not necessarily in the sense of doing their quizzes and all that. So I want to make clear, right? So we have dedicated the podcast to things that are a little bit more kind of outside of the course, right? It's not the kind of stuff you should be worried about. If what you're worried about is something like, I want to do the quizzes well, I want to score well. No. The podcasts are not meant for that. Okay? But rather, if you have started thinking a bit harder, a bit further, you're being a bit more reflective because of what we have been talking about in class, then the podcast is here to accompany you. Yeah.
I mean, I think while they are doing the quizzes, if they ever question themselves, like, why am I doing this, right? They can listen to the podcast, right? Because this is why we're teaching in this way, right? We want you to do philosophy.
Yeah, that's right. The first part is more about that. Or maybe we should start a band instead.
I'm down. Let's go.
Let's go.